It's good to have friends, Russ.
All right, we read the disclaimer. Linwood Township is utilizing video communication as part of its meetings. By participating in this meeting, you agree that your image and or voice may be recorded and retained as part of the meeting. With that, I will call the meeting to order. Would everybody please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Dear Lord, we're here to discuss issues that will affect the people in our community. Be our leader during this meeting and show us the way, because you have chosen us to be here in this time and place. We thank you for the abundant blessings you have bestowed on Linwood Township. Come and give us wisdom to make the right decisions for the benefit of our residents. Guide us in solving problems that come before us tonight. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Clerk, take the roll.
Supervisor Ledke.
Here.
Supervisor Milburn.
Here.
Supervisor Parker.
Here.
Supervisor Olson.
Here.
Supervisor Searing. Here.
Approval of the agenda. I would like to move the chicken duck ordinance ahead of the resolution 2024-09. Any other changes or corrections or additions?
We can move number 9, 12, and 13 to consent agenda and add HR as 6A. Oh, sorry, that's my fault again, because we got a new agenda. So it would be number 9. And then 12 and 13.
Any other changes?
I'd like to pull 9 back out. Is that for the newsletter, Andy?
Yes.
I'd like to pull it back out.
It's my pleasure.
If we want to discuss about it, that's a $200 thing, so.
All right. You want in or out?
And
No? In or out?
what do you ask?
What we're talking about, 9, are we gonna put 9 in the consent agenda or not?
If Carol wants to speak about it, then we have to pull
All
it.
right, we'll pull it out. Okay, so 11 and 12 is gonna go to the consent agenda. Any other changes?
Was it 11 and 12 or 12 and 13? 12 and 13.
Yeah, not 11. All right.
So 12 and 13,
Okay.
and then I would like to add a 5B, so right below 5. As long as we're setting a date for the employee handbook review, I think we should set the date for the budget meeting, or budget review, and get that on the calendar. So it'd be 5B.
Any other additions?
Correct. 5A and then 5B.
Okay. Any other additions, corrections, changes?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the agenda with those modifications.
Just moved and seconded, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, first on the docket will be the chicken duck ordinance. Folks, just to get this up, a lot of people are wound up about this, okay? Let's keep it organized, let's keep it civil out here today, okay?
We will.
I'm just saying, we went through this once before, not too long ago. We're just gonna keep it civil, we're gonna be good about it, right?
Yep.
All right, starting off on, this went to planning and zoning. I see they sent back to, I think they have a couple more questions for us. Number one, I'd like to thank planning and zoning for all the work they've done so far on this, because they've done a lot. So they're trying to do right, they're trying to follow a guideline of this board. So I think we have somebody in the group that was gonna come up and talk, is that correct?
Yep.
Yes, sir. Please step forward to the microphone, identify yourself and.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Willie Gabbard at 23890 Sunrise Road Northeast. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight on behalf of most of the people here. I'm here with all these residents of Linwood Township to oppose the proposed chicken and duck ordinance as written by the Planning and Zoning Committee. I'm also holding a petition SWAT now. There we go, that a little better?
Yes.
I'm also holding a petition here signed by 509 people that have decided to publicly stand up against these changes. These chicken owners, thank you everyone who signed. These are chicken owners, neighbors of chicken owners, and otherwise unaffected residents that see what's happening and don't like it. Quite frankly, we feel the current ordinances are adequate and do not need to be changed at all. However, we understand that you've heard some complaints and you've got a job to do, so we're willing to work with you and see what we can do. Last Tuesday, Mr. Dolphy told us that the board has received a few complaints over the years. These are regarding chickens at large, nuisance manure smell, and nuisance crowing roosters. I think that together we can resolve these three core issues that have been brought before the board. First, as you're aware, the current ordinance already prohibits free-ranging non-domestic animals in Linwood Township. Chickens and ducks are required to have a shelter and a fenced area. We believe there's no need to rehash this issue since there's already a rule on the books in section 30-705, lines 1 and 2. Enforcement as a result of complaint is the only action that needs to be taken. The second issue brought to the board is the odor of chicken manure. We understand that livestock creates manure. Most of us count on it to fertilize our gardens and raise vegetables. We also understand that a compost pile can be smelly at certain times while decomposition is happening. Again, the current township code in section 30-705, line 3, already regulates manure in such a manner so as not to create a public nuisance or impact environment or groundwater. Most residents already do this as part of good housekeeping for their animals and respect for their neighbors. The final issue to tackle is crowing roosters. In February, when you heard a complaint about a crowing rooster, Mr. Miller Burns suggested that the nuisance barking dogs were very similar to a crowing rooster and logically should be treated the same way. I couldn't agree more. As with every animal, roosters each have their own personality. Most are very smart, friendly, and calm. They crow a few times in the morning and then you'd hardly know they were there. On the other hand, there are a few rare roosters that feel the need to crow more during the day. So why do these roosters crow? The obvious answer is sunrise. That's a common time, but roosters crow for a variety of other reasons too. Alerting the flock of predators, leading the flock to food, and establishing dominance are the reasons that a rooster would crow during the daytime hours. All of these reasons are temporary conditions. Usually after the environmental issue is resolved, a rooster will crow much less. Once these reasons are known, rooster owners have a variety of humane methods to reduce the crowing of a rooster. Solving the environmental stimuli that I mentioned previously is the first action an owner can take to help keep the neighborhood happy. There are also other options like keeping the rooster cooped up until the later morning hours so the neighbors can't hear him. There's another solution called a crow collar. It's just a tight band that goes around the chicken's neck so he can still crow, but the volume is greatly reduced, as evidenced by several testimonials for the product. Using the verbiage from our existing dog ordinance in section 4-140, paragraph A, and applying it to our roosters would solve the issue of an annoying crowing rooster. There's no need to totally prohibit the existence of roosters in Linwood Township. Many residents own roosters along with their hens here in the township. Roosters help protect the flock, fertilize eggs so folks can hatch their own chicks sustainably, and keep the peace among the hens' pecking order. They also increase egg production, to name a few benefits. They're also wonderful pets with personality that children and adults of all ages find beautiful. Many residents in our area have taken the rooster to the state fair as showbirds. If the proposal passes as written, nearly every chicken owner in Linwood would have to find a way to get rid of their roosters. If you know anything about chickens, you'll know that it is difficult to rehome a rooster. If this proposal is passed, our residents will likely have to slaughter their birds. How sad! Can you imagine if a stranger told you you had to kill your pet that you love? Imagine the resistance, the uproar that you'd create. So, to sum up, we think that a simple addition to the current ordinance, duplicating the dog barking conditions, would allow a reasonable solution to a nuisance rooster. To close, we believe the board should only address the core complaints that have been brought before you. Linwood Township is a rural area. Copying and pasting rules from cities around Minnesota is a disservice to our community. 99% of the proposed rules in the ordinance have nothing to do with the core complaints that have been brought before the board. These proposals are seen as an unnecessary knee-jerk overreach by the members of this board. We ask you to take a step back and reconsider what you're actually trying to solve here. Please consider the collateral damage that will be caused to the good citizens of this community if these ordinances are passed. Restricting numbers of birds would force residents to slaughter the overage of hens on their property, and that's unacceptable. That restriction literally takes food out of the mouths of families here in Linwood. In case you didn't know, it takes quite a few chickens or ducks to sustain a family, especially if they need to sell a few eggs or raise a few meat chickens to help make ends meet. Speaking of meat birds, let's circle back to the proposed rooster prohibition. Commonly, when you purchase a group of meat birds as chicks, they're all roosters. These chickens take 3 to 4 months to grow to butchering size. If you prohibit roosters, then folks can no longer grow this food source for their families. Limiting the number of coops to a quantity of 1 is problematic. Many folks have more than 1 coop to raise chicks or meat birds separately from the egg layers. Restricting us to a single coop is naive and unreasonable. If you put young chickens in with adult hens, they will be attacked or even killed by the older chickens. Controlling the placement and size of our coops raises even more problems for us. Making folks tear down and or rebuild coops and runs that are suddenly outside of the code is wasteful and expensive. As everyone knows, these are hard times, and many residents struggle to buy groceries, let alone pay to replace a perfectly adequate coop. These are just a few examples of the many issues in the proposed ordinance. So please, we are all here begging you to reconsider. Please only add 1 new ordinance to the current code that will address the unresolved complaint that you've heard: crowing roosters. The rest of the proposal is completely unnecessary and just hurts people. We are a rural township, the last township in Anoka County. We are not a city, and we like it that way. Please help support our country way of life. Please help us remain self-sustainable and free here in Linwood. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Will, did you want to speak?
I guess I'd like to speak on behalf of the town board and the planning commission. Just to give people an idea where this came from and where how it will end up.
Mr. Chairman and board members, Planning Commission, as you know, we work under the direction of the town board. Different ordinances we've been asked to look into to accommodate some of the complaints that come to the office without specific ordinances, certain wording in it, it's difficult for the staff to enforce the ordinances. They have to have certain criteria in it. That's where some, excuse me, some of this has come from. We did, as a planning commission, look at surrounding communities, and yes, we are a township, but we are basically a township just about a city, as far as the population, the density, and everything.
Hey,
No.
gave him, the other guy time to speak, we didn't talk over him. Go ahead, Joe.
I understand people wanted to see, the township remain rural. Well, 50 years ago, we were. The density, the amount of building we've done, more people means more regulation. Like it or not, that's part of society. The planning commission worked hard on this, tried to compare with other communities. We're not as restrictive as many other surrounding communities in our proposal. It's basically trying to get to where down the road we have rules that the office can look at the ordinances and have something to enforce. The noise ordinance has always been difficult. It's hard to interpret, hard to administer. That being said, I guess planning commission did work hard. We didn't just throw this out or anything else. And I don't think it's gonna stand the way it is, the way the people that are in the audience, but again, there's people out there that have issued or given complaints to the office that would like something to happen to resolve their issues. And I understand the importance. I've raised chickens all my life, ever since I was, 10 years old. And I understand the problem with it, the difficulties, and the benefits to it. But I do think that as a population increases, as the lots, we got 2.5 acres, which is plenty to raise chickens on, I'll give you that. Many of our lots are 1/4 acre or smaller. That gets to be a difficulty as far as the amount of noise and crossover stuff that happens. Them are the ones that we're trying to deal with. And if you have an extremely small lot, you may be restricted on how many critters you can have. You are restricted by current ordinance. This is just trying to define the chicken, duck, whatever, raccoon, deer, whatever, all the wording that was in it. I don't think we're gonna be able to throw away this whole ordinance. It can be modified and changed, but I do think that the people have to be understanding enough to let the board and the planning commission put something that's workable for all of the community. And please don't crucify the people that represent you, because we're doing our best to cover everybody's wishes. So just don't think we're doing this out of a personal vendetta or anything. It's trying to do the benefit for all of the township as we grow and as we have grown. So, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Why don't I get an applause?
All right, like I said, they have done their due diligence. I don't know if we gave them enough guidance to make this work. I had our clerk go in and bring back to me for the last 3 years how many complaints that we have actually gotten about rooster chickens. One, we had a problem with the coop, and that gentleman came in, I think, last year, and we had a discussion with him, and he resolved his issue. The only other one this township has had was, I don't have my date, I'll get it to you in a second. I save all my emails.
Back in February.
It was in February, yes it was, thank you very much. Again, it was back in February, and one specifically, it says June 3rd, is that right? We had a complaint on June 3rd of 2024. Those are the only complaints, written complaints, I'll go that way, that we've received. I'm sure people have called in before and have made complaints, but they have put the name to a piece of paper. To me, a complaint, in my mind, isn't legit unless you put your name on a piece of paper. If you're gonna accuse me, I wanna know who's doing the accusing. But looking back on August 25th, 2009, this issue came up in front of this board, not this board, but another board. This basically it says, discussion concluded with a motion by Osterhus and seconded by Holliday, directing the attorney to send a letter to the complainant informing him under our code, the zoning ordinance provides that deer, raccoons, chickens, and ducks may be kept and housed in the R1 district. interprets chicken and to include hens and roosters. That's what the board decided back in 2009. April 22, our clerk received a letter with concerns about chicken coops in the township. Had nothing identified who sent it. The town board acknowledged that they received a copy of the letter. Since the town code allows residents to have chickens but doesn't regulate them, no action was taken. They directed, zoning assistant Sandy Lathrop suggested that planning and zoning be directed to consider the number of chickens allowed and the maximum size of the chicken coops. The board took the suggestion under advisement. No action. And July 12, 2022, after hearing that the office received several complaints regarding roosters and chicken coops, and knowing that the Planning and Zoning Commission had already discussed complaints, the board decided that at this time, they would not be in favor of instituting an ordinance to regulate the keeping of chickens, citing that Linwood is a rural area and that other residential areas allow chickens. This is actions of the board. This is past actions of the board, not this board, but of the board that sat up here. I myself, personally, since I get to speak first, because it's my mic, I think the chickens, this rooster crowing thing should be under the noise ordinance. No place else be placed in there with everything else for the noise ordinance. And I would like to see that we would resolve this issue tonight without going any further. And just keep with what we have existing on the books now and abide by that ordinance.
Amen.
I think that there's a place maybe in the future that somebody come down, if we keep developing, there may be a time and a place to make changes to this. But I think this board, and it's this board's fault, don't get me wrong. We sent this back to planning and zoning, we put a burden upon them, which we probably shouldn't have done, I'll admit to that. I was sitting up here, we did it last time, it's on me, I'll take the blame, I got broad shoulders.
It's all right, Mike.
But after sitting here and going through this and getting the information I got from our clerk, and seeing past actions that this board has done, I mean, this is just 2 years ago, they decided that we weren't gonna do this. And I would just like, I'll make a motion that the rooster ordinance goes to the noise, roosters get included in the noise ordinance, and that we keep the existing ordinance as is. That's my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded, let's have some discussion, now is the time. Anybody?
I'm gonna talk about lake lots for a minute.
Oh, we're not, okay, just a minute.
I think it was us.
Well, it's gonna be, but I wanna give, he did a lot of work on this, so I wanna give him time to speak on this.
My name is Lloyd Horton.
Okay.
So, I'm on the Planning and Zoning Committee. And as we were investigating the current ordinances, they're just as they are today, like if you say we don't want to make any changes, there would not be, they would prohibit more than one structure, whether it be an accessory structure or storage shed, a chicken coop, or a portable structure. There's only one allowed today. So one of the things that we were doing in the chicken ordinance was changing those, revising those ordinances so that you could have a chicken coop along with another structure. So I just wanted to mention that. That was one of the things that we were looking at. We were trying to make it so that there were no restrictions on chicken coops as far as having one. And just, you know, just wanted to bring that up so that you'd be aware of that.
Carol?
Another thing that we talked about was lake lots and.
Can you talk into the microphone a little bit?
Yep.
Thank you.
We talked about lake lots, and in our ordinances, it says that, from the house to the street is your front yard, and your backyard is from your house to the lake. And in our ordinance, it says it has to be in your backyard. So we talked about making an exception for lake lots, so people could have a coop from the house to the street. And of course, none of this is passed, so, the other thing is that there are some ordinances, like it or not, I don't like it, but Anoka County has a shoreline ordinance, and we can't change that. They used to take care of all the shoreline, and, now we have an agreement with them that we have to enforce it, but we have a shoreline, agreement. And that is that any property that's 1,000 feet from the lake or 300 feet from the stream. So the other thing is there's a rule, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a rule that says on a lake lot, you can't have any more than 25% pervious surface. So if you add a coop, you have to be careful that you haven't gone over that. That is not a Linwood rule. That is a state rule. So we have rules that are not particularly Linwood that we have to follow. That's all I have to say.
Andy?
In general, I believe that's why when we ask this question, I ask the question if they are reviewed, because our community does change. And there is stuff on the books that affect the way we live. I can speak to it personally. There's a couple asterisks with my name on them that the ordinance did change because I came before this board. I wasn't smart enough, I didn't have Facebook at the time, to get people in here with me. But, I was told that a permit was gonna expire in a year, and I did not agree with that because I've read that in the building code and came before the board. The board made the change in the ordinance. This one in particular, we don't have a definition of non-domestic animals. And then how do you go forward with that in terms of as it reads? So to me, that's where the review happens at P&Z, that we're constantly looking, not to change, but to adjust to the way we live too, because as it sits now, some of these are all getting zoned R1. We just had development last year that came in at 3 10-acre lots as R1. And now they're limited by what they can do at 10 acres. By all means, this ain't happening with me because my 19 birds are going nowhere. But what I'm getting to is there needs to be exactly what we're having: communication, dialogue, and the review of things, so it doesn't get out of hand somewhere where someone's trying to do something with their property. And then when you look at this one, if you actually read the section we were talking about, non-domestic, the first sentence repeats itself twice. It goes one way, and then it starts at the end and reads it the other way. So I don't know if it's for people that read it different ways. And then it goes into adding exotic animals can't be kept. And then 2 sections later, it says exotic animals can't be kept. So there's a lot of redundancies in our codes and a lot of conflict in our codes. So I'm all for the review. I'm all for inclusion too. And I think that's what more of this seems to be about, because somehow people thought they didn't know or what it was. So I believe wholeheartedly the township can do a better job with the communication side of things. And by all means, we did. The township did everything legally. It was documented with their public hearings and everything. So I think that sometimes gets to where you know, P and Z, the time and effort they put into it, and they're like, we did all this stuff, and what are we missing? So I applaud the time and effort you guys put into it. I had conversations with Lloyd, so to me, if that's the motion, then what's the step and how do we get that to where that direction is there and the definitions are there? So it's not just this again, because that's kind of what our first motion was too. Kind of the chicken before the egg, really, because who's telling who what to do?
Unfortunately, what ended up happening is we tried to get the egg out there first and ban all this stuff before we actually defined what they're actually supposed to be doing, so. Mr. Milburn?
I know the noise ordinance works, because I've had more cops in my driveway because of my neighbors than anybody in this room. Due to either a barking dog, a hollering kid, a robin making too much noise. I've had a challenging neighbor, and the cops have been at my house a lot, and I love them. I love you back there. You're doing a great job. So I've said it before, I'll say it again. If your neighbor's pissing you off with roosters, call the cops. It's a civil issue. Don't. I'm not saying somebody's wasting the time. I'm going to get shunned on this on Facebook. I still got a scar from the last hanging I took on Facebook. But, you know what? Call the sheriff. Call the sheriff. You know what? We try to do our best. I'm going to speak my mind here. I don't like when people trash commissions, because especially the one guy who said the commission's too old. Let's get rid of the people. I take offense to that, because our planning and zoning commission is a bunch of brilliant people, and I don't think they should be trashed on social media. I think they worked their ass off. We asked them to do something, they did it. Of course, nobody likes it. Nobody likes change. But I think they're on the right track. Again, Supervisor Lucky said it. Things change. We're still rural. When I moved up here, I've been up 22 years, we're still rural. Some people don't like it rural. They come up here and they don't like rule. They want rules changed because of it. I've been in construction 30 years. I used to love it when people bought houses by the airport. They lived there for 6 months and they went to the Mac and they cried because the airplanes are too loud. I want new air conditioning, I want new windows. That's what we're doing here, and it just drives me crazy. It's a challenge. It is a challenge, and we are trying to do our best. Where we go from here, I guess we'll find out on social media tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah, so when this came before the board, I struggled with it because I didn't agree with it from the beginning. My fear was we were gonna do exactly this. We're gonna kick it over planning and zoning without enough details or direction or what we expected, put them through a lot of effort and time, and I was afraid we were gonna circle back to this. And the last time it came before the board and we sent it back, that's when, we discussed and I pushed for giving better comments in writing so that we could kind of give them direction. I have found in these ordinances, I'm still new and I'm still learning, but a lot of times we leave things out of what you can do. So it's kind of, can you do it or can't you do it? We don't really have anything in the ordinances that specifies what you can do with chickens. So then we get these people that come back and try to tell you what you can't do with chickens. So coming into this meeting, my feelings were that we needed to do exactly what Mike said and rescind it, go back. After hearing Joe and Lloyd, maybe we're better off having zoning look at not making it so restrictive, but maybe chickens finally have to be addressed in the zoning ordinance, but more in the sense that it's allowed rather than where it's not allowed. And again, I'm kind of on the fence. I think that this was a lot. Bobby had read on the head. It was a civil complaint. One person came in with a complaint, and we started to try to make town law to satisfy one person. And that's not how we should be making law. So I think we're all in agreement that the roosters can be handled under the nuisance law. I think these guys have done a lot of work. I'd like to see them honestly come back with an ordinance that isn't isn't so locked down, but actually talks about putting in chickens and roosters and what that means.
So you would rather see the, instead of the noise or the noise down, you'd rather see the nuisance?
Well, it's already in the nuisance. I mean, that's what it's there. If there's a noise, if there's a dog barking or a king yelling, it's already a nuisance. It's already taken care of there. But I think it should be, otherwise, here's what I'm afraid of. If it doesn't,
Windowsill. All right.
if it doesn't get put into the ordinance this time, what's permitted, that it is permitted, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whoever sits on this counter up here is going to be discussing the same topic again. And so I think that the good thing is we haven't really seen a whole lot of complaints over the years, but there will be some in the future. So that's why I think if we include it in the ordinance that it's allowed and it's acceptable, we're not going to be having this discussion again in 5 years.
Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak just one.
Yes, sir.
in addition to
Come
that.
on up, Joe.
Really quiet on this end.
Yeah, I didn't, can I hear what that?
Okay, hang on, Joe.
The motion was to have the roosters included in the noise ordinance and no other changes to the ordinances.
Okay, that's it.
I'm a nay.
Okay, there's one nay.
Nay.
Huh?
Nay.
2 nays, 3 aye, 2 nay. Motion passes. Joe?
Thank you.
I tried to get here before you voted on that motion. To me, the motion is not gonna work. You already stated, different members have stated, we do need to have some other changes, another review on it. Some of the stuff that Lloyd put into that we did look at had to do with sizes of coops, number of outbuildings. That's changes to the ordinance that need to be looked at and reviewed. This ordinance had more to do than just chickens and roosters. There was a lot of things that, through cross-referencing and that Lloyd found and went back to other ordinances to get it included, as far as accessory buildings, square footage of buildings, all that stuff. That's still in the ordinance. That needs to be reviewed and looked at. And to just act on a rooster-only thing, that's not gonna cut it. We're gonna have to get something more in there to do that. In the ordinance,
Instead of doing it,
in the ordinance that was proposed in that there, on 5 acres, you can have up to 30 chickens. So it's not that restrictive for a family having eggs for themselves. You don't really need more than 30 chickens for a family operation. Anything more than that would require an interim use permit. That was in the ordinance. So there is some regulation in it that will stop chicken farms from coming out. And there's been other people that came up wanting to have hundreds of chickens and other livestock. This was starting to address that. Maybe it didn't do it completely or accurately, but it was dealing with some of the complaints on non-domestic animals, whatever. But I don't think that the motion that I would vote on is, I would like to see it go back to planning, look at it, modify it, get some community participation and awareness. It's been advertised, I'm sorry, it was out there for months. A year ago or so, the planning commission was asked to define a chicken coop. We recommended you define a chicken coop as just an accessory building, which would allow you only one accessory building on it. That's what planning commission went back to the board. The board, or staff, I don't know which way it came from, said that wasn't enough. We needed more meat to it to define a chicken coop. So then we went forward with it, with chicken coops and chickens. So I guess I would like to see the board direct planning to review this, get into it, do some more fine tuning on it, and not so much the number of chickens, but housing them and everything else, okay? I just want that to be part of either a motion, discussion, or something. Thank you.
Joe said it better than I did, but that's what I was talking about, is I think limiting the number of chickens or whether there's roosters or not, that's the part that I think should be inclusive in the ordinances so that it's very clear that you're allowed to do it. You know what I mean? That's what I was referring to, but
It's not clear. So this can live under nuisance, it already is, so.
Right now, everybody-
happy with that vote. what needs to happen is this language still needs to get cleaned up, so there is clarity for the residents on what to do.
So basically, we need to send it back to planning and zoning with the stipulation of what we're looking for, such as coops, number of coops you can have, things on that line.
Right now, everybody that's R1 that has a shed in their backyard and a coop are in violation of our ordinances. So without making these changes, somebody's gonna complain that somebody's got too many buildings in their backyard and it's against the ordinance in order to get the chickens out. And then we're gonna be right back to this conversation again. That's why I think they've done a lot of homework. My issue is with restricting roosters and the number of chickens. I think that's my biggest issue with this, but I think that a lot of the work that they did, when I went through what they presented to us, I think has merit, and actually for the people that have chickens, it's a benefit to get those included in the ordinance. Because now they can have a chicken coop in addition to a shed if they're on an R1 district.
That just needs to be the direction we need to, you can make a motion to have them work on that for that side of this ordinance, so they can work on that side of the ordinance. I'll take some motion, send it to them with that kind of direction. I think that's straight down the line what you want them to look at.
Yep.
But the problem was, we keep throwing stuff at them and just say, do this, and not give them any kind of guidance at all of what we're really looking for.
You're trying to do a complete overhaul when, why don't we just do one step at a time?
Well, basically,
Okay,
that's
let's
what-
deal
that's
with
kinda- that's
coops.
kinda what I'm putting
Let's
right
deal
now.
with it like one step at a time.
All right.
So going back to what John said, you do one step at a time.
Microphone.
Okay, hang on, okay, we get too many people talking, then we ain't gonna have that no more. So, John, would you like to put some directions to planning and zoning to look at coop sizes and?
I would. Joe, do you want to finish what you were saying?
Well, what you had said earlier, and that they're doing this one step at a time.
Joe, you need you on the mic.
Your voice carries.
All right.
Lou and Mike.
As Supervisor Olson said in the conversation, if we do this piecemeal one at a time, we'll be back at it again in a couple of years or 5 years. If we make it more inclusive with the issues that have been brought up by the public and by the board, we can make this a better enforceable ordinance. But I don't think we can do one issue at a time. It's just not the way it works. We've spent enough time working on a lot of details on this ordinance, and I don't think it's gonna take a lot to refine it and make it acceptable. It won't be acceptable to everybody, nothing ever is. There's nothing perfect out there, but I do think we need to have a more broader scope of what the planning commission is to work on.
I think what we need to do is, I think we need to sit down with a joint meeting between planning and zoning and this board, so we can actually go over this and work together to see if we can get some good direction.
If we could have a joint meeting of some kind of whatever the board chooses.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we do a joint meeting, but can we also have a public meeting? I know we've already done a public meeting for this, but I'm just asking procedurally, can we do a public meeting at the same time?
Pam?
You can have public input, but you wouldn't hold a formal public hearing until you've got the ordinance ready to present.
Okay.
But you can certainly invite public comment.
Okay.
I think you're looking at more of the workshop side of
Like
this.
a workshop.
Until we're discussion, direction, then it's drafted, then it comes forth for what is the public hearing. So at that point, the discussion has already been had, the public hearing is a final say of it, and then you're driving down the right road with input along the way.
So that everybody's on the same sheet of music, finally.
Correct.
I think that's what we need to do. So we'll have set a workshop between us and planning and zoning, make this the topic of discussion. We'll do this at a later time and get this discuss as the topic, and then we can get this thing worked out, and maybe we'll come up with a good resolution to it. Is that what we got?
Yep.
All right, we're moving on.
No, you need to let us people speak.
No, ma'am, I don't. Okay, we just passed this right here, and then we set this up to be the way it is, and we're gonna move on. We've already spent enough time on this.
Well,
So-
It's only a point for the board to understand The reason you have this outpouring is because one individual posted notification on the Linwood Township neighbors. You are not getting information out to us in a way that we can respond in a timely fashion.
You need to be.
Either create a Facebook post or post on the Linwood Township neighbors. And
We
let us
don't-
know, this is when we're going to be holding this meeting.
Our official site is the
It's confusing and difficult to find the correct minutes to know what actions are taken. Just put a big simple post. Hey, we're planning to work out how to have chickens in our neighborhood. This is the time and the place. Stick it on the neighbors page. It's easy, it's painless, and we'll all be here.
Thank you very much. Now we move on. Next thing on the agenda is resolution 2024-09.